All right. I think Florida State's going to make a pretty big change here soon. I went up this weekend, and maybe you can tell, but certainly got some sun while I was out there. I don't know if spring games are ever coming back to Florida State. I thought what they did this weekend, and I know that football is king, and I know that's why you tuned in this morning and all those other things, but I don't think that they're going to go back to a spring game. Was up in Tally again this weekend, and there was just a ton going on from Thursday to Sunday. I want to say there were 2 women's tennis matches. There was one men's tennis match, 3 baseball games, 3 softball games, 5 beach volleyball matches, and then beach volleyball actually had a tournament going on that ended up, I think there were like 16 total games, but our team played in 5 of them. But there were 7 or 8 different colleges on campus, from Texas to LSU to USF, South Carolina, FAU was there, and a few more. And so the campus was incredibly busy. The town was incredibly busy. I talked to people that were trying to get seats at Madso or trying to get seats at other places down there in College Town, and it was just insane to try and even get in. All the hotels were essentially, the hotel prices were close to spring game prices too. And I think this weekend was really, really successful for FSU. You know, I can talk about the actual sports and what happened there in just a minute, but just from a marketing perspective, from a number of people on campus perspective, from just the way that the events flowed and stacked on top of each other, you could literally go from a beach volleyball match at 10 a.m. over to the softball game at noon, and then baseball starts at 3 or however it worked out every single day. You could really take in all of it. And there were some things stacked where you obviously couldn't make everything, but I probably went to, 10 different events this weekend across the entire weekend. And I understand, I'd love to know, and I'll try and chat with Florida State about this, but I'd love to know kind of what their total attendance was for everything, because it seemed like everything I went to was absolutely packed. And obviously softball was taking on the number 25 team in the country. The girls are a top 10 team. Beach volleyball is a top 10 team. I think they took on 2 other top 10 teams and then 2 other ranked teams as well. So you've got really good matchups. I think you look at women's tennis, played a top 40 team. Men's tennis is a top 20 team. And so there, you've got good programs, good athletics going on at all these different places. And I think that you got more, I try to think of how to say this. You almost got more touch points by doing, what did I just mention? 5, 6, 7, 8, and say 14 different events across a weekend than you would for 1 2-hour scrimmage. I want to say that for a really good spring game, Florida State expects around 20 to 25,000 people. And you're certainly going to get less when you don't have football as the main thing. But I think that if you added up the number of people that were all at all the events, you're probably looking at similar numbers. If Florida State would have had a spring game this year, how many people do you think would have gone? I mean, just being fair, like not trying to be super negative or whatever. This is more of a positive update, but maybe 15. Maybe 15,000. I mean, you certainly had more than 15,000 people at all the events this weekend. When you consider, how many baseball had for all 3, the first 2 games being sellouts, softball's sold out. I know the first game, probably the second as well. Sundays are always a little bit less attended when you think about all the people that were on campus for beach and for the tennis matches as well. I think you certainly had more than 15. I don't know if you had up to 20 or 25. I'll try and get more numbers on that as we go. But I do think that this was really, really successful. I think the event was really, really well put on. It gave people a chance to see more things. And if they do something like this next year, which I would anticipate they will, I spoke with some people there and would anticipate they do. If you do go bet on it, I saw Florida's a 1.5 favorite over at BetUS. Are you taking the over? Are you taking the? Here's the thing: if it goes over 140 points, I think Florida wins. If it stays lower scoring and the teams are in the high 60s, low 70s, then I think Houston will take it. But I mean, classic matchup of offense versus defense, and a lifelong Cougars fan here. Double fries, no slaw. I think it's a better event than just a 2-hour scrimmage. And I know that football is still king. I know that that's what people care about. I know that that's what excites the most people. I'm not telling you to start caring about tennis and beach volleyball and softball and baseball more than football. Like, that's not the point at all. But just the chance to get around and make more of a weekend out of it. So many people come up for the spring game and stay for 3 or 4 hours to tailgate, 2 hours for the game, and then just go home because it's kind of at a convenient time, right? If the spring game starts at 2 and is done by 4, you can be home almost anywhere in the state, right? Even if you're going down to Miami, you can be home before bedtime, right? And if you're going less than Miami, maybe you're going to Tampa or Jacksonville or Orlando, you can be home in 2, 3, 4 hours. And so I think a lot of people do go home afterwards if they're not drinking crazy. And so it creates more of a weekend as opposed to just one event that you go to and you're done with. Also, the way that Florida State under Mike Norvell has done spring games, I absolutely hate. I hate the fact that it's basically just a drill session, right? It's not even it's barely a scrimmage. Maybe if we had an actual game, I'd feel differently. But I think the best option, if we're going to do anything, which Norvell hasn't really had to comment on, the portal tampering stuff and all these other excuses that coaches have for spring games, he got to basically just be shielded by the renovations. I think if you were going to do any kind of a spring game again, you would build it around a weekend like this. So maybe you do your spring game at noon on Saturday, but then you stack everything else. You have a softball game at 4, and you have beach volleyball before all of that in the morning, and you have a baseball game Saturday night, so it's 7 or 8 o'clock, and you can kind of build out the same weekend you had, but still have football. Now, I will say from a logistical standpoint, it's probably harder to put on a football scrimmage and then do all that other stuff the same weekend. I know that becomes kind of for Seminole Productions and other things that are happening, I know that probably becomes more difficult. But if Florida State does this again in the future, which I think they will, I would certainly encourage you to go. You may hate it. You may say like, oh, this wasn't for me. But just being able to take in a ranked baseball series, a ranked softball series, a bunch of ranked matchups in other sports, and be able to see it all and really enjoy an entire weekend, not just go up for a 2-hour drill session. I thought that was really, really cool. Again, I know a lot of people only care about football. Maybe you care about basketball a little too, or baseball as well, but really being able to take everything in at once, to me, I'm a fan of a lot of these other sports too. I really like softball. I really like taking my kids to beach. I really like taking my kids to baseball. So, I'm probably biased here, but I thought it was more enjoyable than the way that we've done spring games for the last, 4 or 5 years since Mike's been here. Maybe if it was truly a 2 or 3 hour spring game, like we used to do under Taggart or under Jimbo or whatever, maybe I'd feel a little bit different. But the way we do spring games now versus the way that they put on this Seminole Sports Weekend, I thought this blew that out of the water. It was so much more fun. You got to do so much more stuff. It was truly a weekend, not just a 2 or 3 hour experience up in Tallahassee. And so if they do this again, when they do this again, you should go check it out. Use sunscreen like I did not, but it was a lot of fun. So that's my plug for the weekend. Was really, really good. Softball won their series. I'll just quickly go through results. Softball won their series 2-1. They were down 7-1 in game 2 and came all the way back to win 9-8. And then they won the series yesterday in run rule fashion. Baseball won the first game on a walk-off, dropped the next 2 by run rule. I saw they dropped from like 5th to 8th or 9th in the rankings. Yeah, you can't get blown out 2 games in a row. A lot of issues with Florida State's bullpen right now. Hopefully they can get that figured out. They play Florida on Tuesday. I think I'm going to that game in Gainesville. If any of you guys are going, let me know. Beach volleyball won 4 of their 5 matches. They lost a top 10 matchup to Texas, who they had beat earlier in the year. They beat top 10 LSU and then swept on Saturday. They beat USF, I think FAU and South Carolina on senior day. And then women's tennis split their matches. They lost on Thursday, won on Sunday against, I think they're ranked around the 70s, and they beat Wake Forest, who's ranked like 36. That was a big win for them. And then men's tennis beat Louisville. So overall, a successful weekend. I know baseball struggled, and that's kind of the headliner for a lot of people, but overall, a pretty successful weekend for all the teams that competed there in Tallahassee.